بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. Okay, so then we said the order. And so for Imam Shafi'i says the order is necessary. Number one, because the Prophet only ever did it in that order. So um, that is in principle a proof. Okay, so why is that a proof? So it's a proof because the Prophet only ever did it in that way. That's not the reason. The reason is, so it's an important thing to understand when the Prophet does something, um, he is either doing an act of worship or he's doing something that he does in his capacity as a human being. So the Prophet, for example, used to rest after his tahajjud, right? Um, and particularly he used to lie down on his side after praying 2 rakahs before praying Fajr. So we all agree on that. The question is, in what capacity did he do that? Did he do that because he was a human being who was tired? Or did he do that who was a prophet who was legislating the sunnah of what to do between the 2 rakahs before Fajr and Fajr itself? That's the question. So it is wrong to come along and say it is sunnah because the Prophet did it. That is not a good argument. That is not a sound argument at all because the Prophet doing something or not doing something is not legislative in itself. It's not tashri' in itself. Rather, we say, or the Shafis say, the Prophet did this ala wajhil qurba, by way of doing an act of worship. So we have to basically, so here, obviously, when the Prophet doesn't, a Prophet makes wudu, the Prophet is doing it ala wajhil qurba. The Prophet is doing it by way of doing worship, right? So we say, the Prophet made wudu, and the Prophet always made wudu in this way, and so therefore it is qurba, and wudu is wajib, it's obligatory, so therefore the way the Prophet did it is wajib. That said, um, the Prophet ﷺ also told somebody, right, who was asking about wudu, right, he told him, um, tawadda kama amarak Allah, right? Make wudu as Allah has commanded you. And so if we then now depart from what the Prophet ﷺ did and we just look at the hadith, that the ayah does not include doing things in order. However, there is a latifa, there is a subtle thing in the verse. If you look at the verse, it says, wash your faces, wash your arms, wipe your feet, wipe your head, wash your feet. It says wash, wash, wipe, wash. Right? And so Imam Shafi'i, he says, it is not known, we don't know that the Arabs would randomly put something in a very particular order without that order being intended. So why would Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically say wash, wash, wipe, wash, which is very peculiar. You could imagine saying wipe, wash, 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 or wash, 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 wipe, something like that. Like, why is that order so important? That must be important, i.e., must be obligatory, right? So Imam Shafi basically using those two points of view. The Prophet never ever showed this act of worship being done in any other way, A, and B, the particular rhetorical inelegance that would be there if the order were not necessary, right? So we say that's the case. I believe the Maliki say the same thing to some extent. Excuse me. So, um, so you could imagine then as well that there's an echo of the precedent of the way of Medina. Um, there's another hadith as well where the Prophet ﷺ is asked about Safa and Marwa. And he tells the Sahabi, Ibda bima bada Allah bihi, begin with that which Allah began with. So in the Quran, which one does Allah begin with, Safa or Marwa? إن الصفا والمروة من شعائر الله.
So Safa,
Good, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins with Safa, so therefore we have to begin with Safa. And that is obligatory. You can't just like, so the seven going between Safa and Marwa, the hills is starting at Safa, going to Marwa, going to Marwa, going to Safa, etc. And so now we say, well, what are the Prophet ﷺ's words when he said, begin with that which Allah begun with? Is that exclusive to the question that was put to him? The answer is no. We don't say that. The Prophet ﷺ, when the Prophet ﷺ is speaking in a general sense, the default is a general until proven otherwise. So yes, the Prophet ﷺ was being asked a question about Hajj, but the general answer is there. It says, "But ibda bima bada Allah bihi." So the hadith then says, begin with that which Allah began with. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala began with the face, and then the arms, and then the hair, and then the feet. So therefore the order is necessary, right? So that's the Shafi school. I'm not sure about the Maliki school, but the other schools I believe say it's recommended and not obligatory. So in the Shafi school, if you doubted, let's say for example, you washed your face, you washed your arms, what you're in the process of wiping your head, and now you doubt washing your face, you have to go back and do your face and arms again. Why? Because it has to go in order. So if you didn't do your face, that means you didn't do your arms because whatever was breaking the order didn't count, right? So if you doubt anything, you go back to it. Now, regarding doubt, what if you doubt about having, there's two times when doubt can occur. A doubt inside the wudu or doubt of having had finished the wudu. Okay, and we're going to apply the principle here. Al-yaqeen la yazulu bil-shak. Certainty shall not left by doubt. So before you have completed the wudu, the default is you do not have wudu. The default is you have not done a wudu. The default is you have not done a valid wudu. So if you doubt while making wudu, you have to act upon that doubt and you have to go back. So you doubt about your face, go back to your face. You doubt about your arms, go back to your arms. You doubt about your hair, go back to your hair. And then do everything that comes after it. You doubt about your feet, go back to your feet. Now, you doubt about your wudu. Did I make wudu or not? Same thing. Go back and make wudu. I'm not sure if I made wudu or not. Okay, then go back and make wudu. But if you start doubting after you finish making wudu, you finish making wudu and you say, well, did I do my arms or not? Did I do my face or not? Then you ignore it. Why? Because the default setting now is that you do have wudu. Okay? So while you're making wudu, the default is that you don't have wudu. So you're going to have to go back and act upon doubts. Once you finish making wudu, the default is that you've made wudu. So now you're doubting, did I do my face or not? It doesn't matter. Unless you have certainty. There's a camera in front of you, right? I watched you, I videoed you. I said, listen, bro, look, I videoed you. You obviously did not wash your face. Go back and do it. Okay. But otherwise, you just ignore it. You ignore doubts. Okay? And you only act upon yaqeen. You only act upon certainty. Now, I have a question. I don't doubt washing my arm, but I doubt washing every speck of my arm. Am I ever certain that I washed every speck of my arm?
no. And if I
No.
recall, wasn't part of the conversation that, or what you've told us over the years, Sheikh, is that you are supposed to wash, and you wash the best you can, but there's also a symbolic nature to wudu, right?
That's correct. That's symbolic. But putting the symbolic to the side, if you apply the principle, right, which is certainly shall not to be lifted by doubt, and so I'm going to apply the same principle. I'm going to say, hey, you don't know if you washed your whole arm, so go wash it again until you know you washed your whole arm, right? That would make sense. But there's a conflicting principle there as well, which is al-mashaqqatu tajlibu taysir, the issue of difficulty, recurrent difficulty. So if you ask everybody to be 100% sure that they washed every speck of their face, even though they can't see their face because they're not in front of a mirror necessarily, or they can't see every single angle of their arm, or they can't see the bottom of their foot necessarily, right? So, so we say that that you have to have certainty while you're making wudu. You have to have certainty that you've washed your arm, for example, but you have to have confidence that you've washed every speck of your arm. So that's reasonable. It's reasonable to say, yeah, I'm pretty sure I've done every speck on my arm. Okay. But it's not reasonable to ask people to know to be certain every single time that they've washed every single part of it. So that's now it breaks the rule, right? It's breaking the rule, which is, oh, but you're not certain that, yeah, I know it's breaking the rule, but that would be difficult, right? So uh this is certainly civil law, not so much about American or English law, but civil law, right, is principles, right? You have it's there are precedent, right? That's a hadith and the verse of the Quran that's true, and precedent for okay, this scholar said that before you, that scholar said that before you. That's true, but it is conflict, it's principles and conflict of principles, and how do you marry two conflicting principles? That's what we do non-stop, day in day out in fiqh. Does that make sense, inshallah?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
Yeah.
okay, great. Okay, so then it mentions sunan. So in the Shafi school, we do not have wajibat, right? So the question is like, why? Why don't we have wajibat? Why do we have arkan, which are bare essentials, and then sunan, right? So in reality, this is human creation, right? It's our human, right? Fiqh is, what is it? Amaliya bashariya muwaffaqa, right? It is a human, i.e., imperfect human operation. There's tawfiq in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put tawfiq in it. Yeah, there's tawfiq in general in fiqh, right? Um, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put tawfiq, has created ulama that mashallah, amazing people. But it is the efforts of humans at the end of the day, right? This is the mere efforts of humans. So the Shafis, they come along and they're looking from one lens and they say, well, is it fard, meaning is it a bare essential? No, it's not. Okay, therefore it must be sunnah, right? And the Malikis do a similar kind of thing. And the Hanbalis and Hanafis, they say, well, hang on a minute. I mean, couldn't it be in between? Couldn't there be bare essentials that are obligatory, and then things that are obligatory but they're not bare essentials, and then sunnahs, right? And so it's very tricky. These are very important things that we have to understand. Is that we are interpreting the law, right? As one of my not I wouldn't say one of my teachers, but one of the scholars in Jordan and the teacher of Sheikh Faraz Khan, right? If you might have heard of Sheikh Faraz Khan in Zaytuna College, Dr. Sahil Hanif, who's head of Zakat in Zakat Foundation now in England, Dr. Salman Yunus, Sheikh, what's his name? Tabriz Azam. He has the Irshad organization. He teaches Hanafi fiqh, right? So Dr. Salah Abul Hajj, he said, نحن متعبدون بآراء رجال, right? The only way that we can worship, the way that we have been asked to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is through the mere opinion of mere mortal men, right? So this is all it is, right? So when you are interpreting, you are coming with a certain assumption, right? There's a certain assumption in your mind, or a certain angle that you're going to question, or a certain way of looking, right? You looked from this angle, you came to this conclusion. Somebody came from another angle, came to another conclusion, right? And so that's just the nature of, the nature of things. You can't separate yourself from certain preconceptions, can you? It's not possible. Now you can reduce them to some extent as much as you can, but you can't completely divorce yourself from the way that you think as a human being. So that just creates difference of agreement. That's how it is, right? The our way of human interpretation of divine words. That's all we have. There's no other option. You can't be like, oh no, I just want to follow the sunnah itself as opposed to your understanding or my understanding. There is nothing. There is no such thing as a sunnah itself. There is only my understanding or your understanding or their understanding. That's how it is. Yeah, I just follow Sahih Hadith, Sahih according to so and so or according to so and so. That's all, right? Um, okay. So anyway, so we say in the Shafi school we have fard, you have to, and if you don't do it, you haven't made wudu. Or sunnah, you should do, but if you don't do it, you still have wudu. So it says, and it says recommended actions are saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And this is very important. According to Imam Ahmad, this is obligatory, right? So we should be careful about this. The Hanbali school is kind of a cousin of the Shafi school. Um, and so we should be careful about this, saying the Bismillah. We shouldn't say it in a bathroom where there's a toilet. So step outside the bathroom, say Bismillah, and then step in, make wudu, etc. Try your best, basically. By washing the hands before putting them into a container. So imagine if you're using a bucket to make wudu, you pour the bucket out onto your hands and you don't put your hands in the bucket. So wash your hands 3 times to do the mouth and nose. And then this is very important. This is obligatory for Imam Ahmad. I believe also for the Hanbalis. I'm not sure exactly. For the Malikis, I'm not sure exactly. But it's very important, right? So the Prophet told us to do it. We say, no, it's Sunnah. But we should be careful. So making sure you do the mouth and nose, this is important. So you're scooping the I'll send a video, inshallah. There's a video from Sheikh Habib Omar about making wudu. So I'll show that video anyway. So scooping scooping to your mouth and nose, and then blowing it from your nose and mouth, gargling it around as much as you can, unless you are fasting. Right? You're doing that 3 times. So you wash your hands 3 times, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, your mouth and nose 3 times, and then
Sheikh,
obviously,
can I ask a question?
Bismillah, go ahead.
So there's two questions actually. First is this is talking about a vessel, but does the same rule apply when water is coming out from a tap or faucet?
Mm.
Which is that washing the hands, like in terms of like this is applying to a vessel, but I'm just saying is that there's the same thing with the water coming out of a tap, right?
Yeah, so
If you
there are two separate sunnahs. One is washing your hands at the beginning of wudu. The other one is washing your hands before you scoop from that bucket.
okay,
He puts that as kind of two things together. Does that make sense? So if you're using a
yeah, and then
faucet, that
the
means Bismillah, I'm going to wash my hands 3 times.
okay, I got it. The second thing I wanted to ask, maybe this is going to be covered later, is about the nature of like what makes water pure and impure, which I know you've talked about before. Because I'm in India at the moment, and in almost every masjid they have a water tank for people to do the wudu, and there's always fish in the water.
Yeah, that's fine. So the fish do their business
Okay,
in it. But the thing is that the water tank is it's a large body of water, so it doesn't matter.
it meets the requirements of about.
Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And even if it stank, even if you can see somebody had put too much, one of the kids was feeding the fish and poured the whole bag of the fish food in it, and then it kind of like got murky or something like that. It's still fine. I mean, it's not very nice to make water from it, but it's still fine, pure. Um, okay. So rinsing the mouth and nose, and then let's just go through it in order though. So, Bismillahir Rahmanir washing my mouth, okay, washing hands, using siwak. So I'm gonna do my siwak. Then I'm gonna do my mouth and nose. Okay. Then I'm gonna do my face and do my face 3 times and make sure I go all over to my ears, go past the limits, right? Well, that was a question for this week, wasn't it? We skipped something. We were talking about washing the limits of the face and elbows and feet. I can remember that question from last week. I asked about making wudu and if wudu is obligatory, then what else is obligatory?
Um, you
So
asked if
let's ask the question again then. Here I am, uh, sitting down, and Dhuhr comes in. I have to pray, but I don't have wudu. Am I obliged to make wudu?
yes.
Okay. The only place where the water is 500 feet to my left. Do I have to walk there and get it?
If you have enough time,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. I'm going to go and walk there. Now I get there, and the guy says, I'm only going to give you water if you pay me $1. Do I have to pay that money?
Um,
10 cents. It costs 10 cents, for example, for the water. and I have 10 cents.
Then you do, right? Yes.
Okay. What if it costs 10 cents, but I don't have the 10 cents? But I could earn it within the time.
Then you do. Yes.
Okay. But then the only way I could do the job, he's saying, I need you to find out how to say this in Japanese, and I will, and then the only way you can do that is now searching on your phone. And the only way you can do that is plugging your phone in. So now you have to walk back to your place, plug it in, right? And now charging your phone randomly has become obligatory because that's the only way that you could get the 10 cents. And that's the only way you could make the wudu, and that's the only way you could pray. So the principle is ما لا يتم وجود الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. ما لا يتم وجود الواجب به فهو واجب. Principle is that if there's something without which an obligatory action cannot be done, then that thing itself becomes obligatory. Right? That's the principle. Right? That random things that are not obligatory in themselves can suddenly become obligatory. Right? Or right? That's the principle.
Yeah.
Now, so here we say the same thing with the limits of the face. We say it is impossible to wash your whole face unless you wash a tiny part beyond the limits of the face. It is impossible for a woman, for example, to cover all of her, everything other than her face if the hijab doesn't cover a tiny bit of her face, right? It is impossible for you to cover your awrah if you don't cover a tiny bit of your knee, because if the knee itself is not awrah, but whatever is above the knee is, you have to cover a tiny bit of your knee. Otherwise, how on earth could you actually physically cover your whole everything between the knee and the belly button line without covering a tiny bit of that thing itself? The elbows, you can't wash every single thing from up to and including your elbows if you don't wash a tiny speck, like I don't know, one gazillionth of a centimeter beyond it. With the feet and the same thing, right? So we say doing going over a little tiny bit is obligatory, right? Because it's not possible. لا يتم ما لا يتم وجود الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. Okay. Now let's apply this question to Hajj. Okay, I do not have enough money to go on Hajj. Am I obliged to go and earn it?
Yes.
I have to go and work in order to get enough money to go on Hajj.
Yes.
That is not true.
Uh,
What about zakat? I don't have enough money to pay to zakat, so do I have to go and earn the money to go and pay zakat?
No.
no.
Zakah is not mandatory if you don't have income.
Unless I have the money. Hajj is
Right.
not obligatory unless I have the money, right?
Right.
So there's a difference between ما لا يتم وجود الواجب إلا به and ما لا يتم وجوب الواجب إلا به, right? So there's one thing which is I'm obliged to do A. I can't do A without B. B becomes obligatory. Versus um, A will become obligatory through B. Am I obliged to realize B in order for A to become obligatory? No. They're different things, right? So ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. ما لا يتم وجود right? Having that thing, there's something obligatory. That thing will not happen without this. Okay, therefore you got to go and do something else. But you don't have to make the thing obligatory, right? A woman, for example, she doesn't know exactly when her period is going to stop today. So does she keep having to go and check? Because as soon as she knows that her period has stopped, she's going to have to make ghusl and pray. Is she obliged to check? She's not. Right? Why? Because she's not obliged to make. She's obliged once she knows that that's the case, but she's not obliged to make herself know. Right? If you have najasa on you, okay, if you have najasa on you, you're gonna have to wash it off. But you obliged to check to see if it's there? No, you're not obliged to do that. Right? If this ice cream that you're eating right now has gelatin in it, you can't eat it. Am I obliged to find out? No. I'm not obliged to find out. Right? I mean, so scrupulousness is something else. I'm not talking about scrupulousness. What I'm talking about though is in terms of wujub, in terms of being obliged to, there's no obligation to that. Okay? So that's many principles that we learned here. Okay, so we said you do your face, your face, washing your face. So going beyond a little bit beyond the face is wajib. Going a bit beyond that, so going onto your ear, a bit onto your hair, onto your neck, this is sunnah, right? With your arms going up all the way to part on up to your upper arm towards your shoulder, right? This is sunnah, right? With your feet washing up towards your up your onto your calf, this is sunnah. Okay. Um, Wiping the entirety of the head, very important, right? Remember we had that discussion that we said the Malikis and the Hanbalis, they said that doing the whole of the head is wajib, so we should be a bit careful there, right? We should be careful, make sure we do the whole of our head. It's sunnah. So number five, wiping the outer and inner ear parts of the ear, right? Again, I'll show that in the video, inshallah. Doing that with the sunnah. So the ears are done 15 times in total. So you do it 3 times along with the face. So as you're washing your face, you do it 3 times. As you're doing your head, you're doing the top edges of your ears. So that's 6 times. Then you get your index finger and put it in the beginning of the opening of the ear canal, and your thumb behind, and you do that 3 times. Wet your fingers, wash going through all the grooves of your ear, and do that 3 times. Then you get your index finger, and you wet it, and you do the opening of the ear, and then you wipe the ears again 3 times with just the outside, just brushing it over them with the palm of your hand. So there's a total of 15 times, right? Total of 15 times. Okay. And then it says combing a thick beard with one's wet fingers. So we said it is not obligatory to get water inside your thick beard, i.e., a beard that cannot be seen through, because that's difficult. Okay, so I don't have to. Should I? Yes. Right. So there's a huge, unfortunately, a huge tajheel, spreading of ignorance, when you say Muslims are not obliged to do that because that's difficult, versus Muslims shouldn't do it because they're difficult. Right? So we've heard people say this, right? The Prophet, so many times we've heard people promote this idea. The Prophet was never given 2 options except that he chose the easiest of them. Therefore, you should always take the easiest option. That's not true, right? That's not what the fuqaha say, right? So when we say you're not obliged to, that doesn't mean you shouldn't, right? So I gave the example of the ice cream. So I say, a lot of ice cream has gelatin in it, and then you like in your middle of eating it. So it's one thing to say you're not obliged to. That's important, right? I'm going to say, no, you have to check. No, you don't have to check. The default is ice cream is milk, right? That's what it is. It's milk and it's cold. So whatever is added to it, I don't know. The default is this milk. So I don't have to check whether milk is pure or not. Okay, that's true. Now, but is it scrupulousness? Is it a good idea to check? Yeah, it's a good idea to check. Why not? Right? So scrupulousness is recommended, right? And so there was one sheikh, a very famous sheikh, talking about meat, for example, and he said like huge two blunders that are really kind of like off one is that, you can just assume all meat to be halal, which is not true. And, the sheikh is Hanbali, and that's not what Hanbali say either. And then he said, it's not even good. Like the deen is, the deen is easy. The deen being easy does not make it mean that you cannot make it hard for yourself. Right? Being scrupulous is not something discouraged. Rather, being scrupulous is something that is encouraged. Right? So somebody who is in a balanced way being scrupulous, for example, I'm going to avoid everything that any of the form of their hips is haram. It's like, yeah, good idea. Right? I don't see a problem with that. Right? Or I don't eat this, I don't eat this. There's a million things I don't eat. Right? Because it's possibly involved with this bad company. I don't buy Nike because of their treatment of their workers. I don't do this. Like, this is called wara. Why not? Right? So being careful is not wrong. It's just you're not obliged to be careful. Right? So I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It is a good thing to be careful. You're just not obliged to. That's all. Right? Does that
Sheikh,
make? Yeah.
aren't we obliged to read labels if a label is available on a candy bar, for example?
No, we're
We
not. No,
can't.
because you're
So I
obliged
mean,
to. So the default. if it is meat, you're obliged to because the default is it's meta, right? The default of it is meta, that it is something that's najas, right? So now you need to know otherwise, right? I need to know, but this is some salad, right? How many times have I seen salad that has wine in it? Literally wine, not white wine vinegar or red wine vinegar. It literally has wine in it. Like, man,
Mm.
I have to throw it away. But was I obliged to check? No, not obliged to check. There's no obligation to do that.
There's no, so you go to a supermarket, you're not obliged to check any
No,
products.
not obliged to.
You
No,
can
just buy every single thing because the default is that this is bread. Bread is pure. The default is this is milk. Milk is pure. The default is a cheese. Cheese is pure. That's the asl. So you're not. There's no obligation, even if it's likely, right? Even if it's likely. So you said in the last, for example, 3 times that I checked, it was haram. You still don't have to do it. But again, what is something else is like, hey, so you're telling me I shouldn't? No, you should. Bismillah, go ahead. You've got the time and you're a balanced person. You're not going eight, you spent 3 hours doing it, and now you think that everything is haram in the world, and you float in the midair in your room because everything's najis. No, that's not balanced, right? So as long as you're a balanced person, spending time being careful is good, right? Like you want to invest in stocks and you spent 5 times the amount of time investing because you wanted to check if they're halal or not. Great, bismillah. You wanted to find out where the cocoa's from, right? Is it you wanted to only buy fair trade? So I don't want people to be abused, treated as slaves for my candy or something like that. I don't want that. Bismillah, that's good. But there's no wujub. You're not obliged to. Go
the
ahead, but
only thing you're obliged to check for is meat, correct?
correct. Right? And that's the only thing people don't check, right? They say khalas, it says halal, but the asl, so let's say, yeah, in America, why am I saying being strict in America? Because the asl is that the halal label means zero. It does not mean anything, right? That's why it's like, so there is no label. They say, but they said it was halal. That doesn't mean anything. And you and I know it doesn't mean anything. So therefore you can't trust it, right? Um,
But should you assume it's halal, يعني, just because it says?
And look, it doesn't mean anything. It's like it's as if وجوده وعدمه سواء, right? It means nothing,
Mm.
right? It means nothing. But I'm in Jordan, right? خلاص, I'm in Jordan
Yeah.
right now. I'm in Iraq. I have no idea how things work in Iraq. I'm in Iraq. Someone give us some meat.
But you're
خلاص,
not
the
going to
default
check.
is meat in Iraq is طاهر. Now, is it possible that this is all from something else? Yeah, right. So, but there's the asl is. The meat is from here, it's mahalli, it's local, and it's madbuh ala tariqa islamiyya. That's the asl, right? I don't have to check, right? Whereas here, that's not the case. That's not the asl, right? So therefore, you have to check, right? So with meat, you've got to be
Exactly.
careful. With um, everything else, you're not obliged to be careful, but it's good, right? We should be careful about, diamonds, right? I think they're called blood diamonds, right? Diamonds that are from areas where it's like, subhanAllah, the only reason you could buy that diamond, here's an Eid gift for your wife. That's fantastic. It's like, do you know where this diamond comes from? It comes from like a war-torn area. And it's like how many teenage, people died in whatever the Congo or something like that for that diamond. And you're like, wow, I didn't realize, you know? And you're like, subhanAllah. Like, so being like aware and like the morality of these things, um, I remember somebody was asking my brother, it's like, hey, do you want to work for Goldman Sachs? And he's like, Goldman Sachs, what are you talking about? I was like, huh? Well, who are they? And it's like, oh, it's like being aware of like, okay, what does this company do? Who are they involved in? Who do they support? What's that, and, these kind of things. Nestle, yeah, I don't want to buy Nestle because of this or what I could have that. Yeah, this is good. Right? This is being a wholesome Muslim, right? But is it wajib? No, it's not wajib.
Jazakallah khair.
Alaikum. Badr, you had a question?
I know you've hammered this point home a lot, but I just want to make sure I understand it completely. So I understand the meat, and I understand in general you don't have to check for stuff. Even though I know there's like halal in like Tillamook cheese, for example, it'll have a
Hmm.
halal label. But what if, I mean, I heard that like there's one type of cheese where it's like a traditional type of cheese made in Italy where they have to put pork in it. for it to be considered authentically from that style. Or I think that's what it. So in that case, would you just assume it's haram unless proven otherwise? Like, would the default be?
I don't know. I don't know. So, so the default is they say no, right? So the default thing they say, they say ما غلب في نوعه النجاسة حكم بطهارته. That's the general principle, right? So it's even basically, so there's an asl there, which is that it's pure, like it's milk. And then you say, but it's normally had this thing is added to it. So yeah, but the default is this until you know otherwise. There are some exceptions to that. And so Allahu alam. I mean, so I don't know. I'd be careful about it, that's all. I mean, you know.
Okay.
But my point was basically people slamming people who are careful. It's like that's wrong, right? That's wrong. Like if I'm like, bro, you don't have to check. I know. Thank you. Jazakallah. I know I'm not obliged to check, but I want to check. That's totally fine. It's a good thing to do. Right? Wara is good, you know. How many hadith tell us about wara? It's important. Um, but where's the problem? What if you have wara in chocolate bars, but you don't have any wara in your words? Right? You have wara when it comes to I don't know, when it comes to the kind of car you buy, but no wara in terms of what you watch on TV. What do you call that? We call that taqwa barida. Taqwa barida, right? Like cold taqwa. Like it's like, it's like it's meaningless. It's like, was it this guy goes to the sheikh and says, Sheikh, I did something I shouldn't do. So what happened? She got pregnant. And the guy's like, well, why didn't you use contraception? He says, Sheikh, contraception's makruh. It's like, bro, like you're talking about like something's makruh and you just did something like, everybody agrees is haram, and like, what are you talking about? So like your deen is off, right? You being careful of the minor thing, but you're not careful of a major thing. It means there's a misbalance. It's not saying that you shouldn't be careful of minor things, but it means it's kind of really off, right? So like you're really into like, okay, halal food and this and that, and don't buy this company from, buy from this company, and which, and then it's like, subhanallah, brother, you say words like this, or you don't consider that to be riba, or like, subhanallah, right? It's a lack of balance. So, when people have wara, that's fine. Have wara, and that's great. And I believe, Sheikh Sadiq used to say, like, wara for us today is just making sure that anything you do is a halal according to all one of the form of dhahib, just one of the form of dhahib. Like that's your wara. Like that's how careful you should be, right? Because somebody kind of get caught up with like, oh, I'm being careful about this and careful about that. It's like, really? There's other things you have major problems with, bro, and that's not, it's just really not on. And so we should. And I don't know who said it. One of the ulama, he said, said basically like good deeds, right, are done by all sorts of people, right? Like, people go on Umrah, people go on people give sadaqah, people build masjids, people do a khatam, people do sort of kaf on Friday. MashaAllah, that's great. Very impressive. Like all sorts of people do good deeds. But the only people who avoid the haram, lock, stock, and barrel, are like the awliya of Allah, right? The only people, like you look at their life, and it's like there is nothing haram in their life, right? Is the awliya. So, everything else is kind of great. But what's really important is like, is there anything that have I made sure that everything in my life is halal according to at least one of the form of dhahib, right? That is the most important thing, right? And it's way more important than, for example, I don't know, checking cheese or something like that. Wallahu a'lam. Um, but I repeat, it is wrong to come along and say it's wrong to check. Right? The Prophet ﷺ was given meat by a Jewish person, and he didn't check whether it was halal haram. Therefore, it is wrong to check whether halal haram. That's not true. So the Prophet ﷺ the Prophet ﷺ not telling us, or it not reaching us that he didn't check. that he checked does not mean anything. So the Prophet ﷺ told us in many times, be careful, right? دع ما يريبك إلى ما لا يريبك. Leave that which you're worried about, you're not comfortable with, to things you are comfortable with. So now you come along and say it's kosher, you should eat it. You realize, hang on a minute, what do you mean by kosher? What do you mean by Jew? What do you mean by slaughter? Right? And you're asking these questions. These are good questions to ask. These are not wrong questions to ask, right? And then sometimes they're obligatory questions to ask. Okay, where do we get to? So washing inside the beard, brother. Why are you doing that? You don't have to do it. The deen is easy. No, it's fine. I know I'm not obliged to, but it is sunnah. Putting the fingers through the toes, through the finger, doing what's it called, takhleel, rubbing your hands, putting your hands through your hands and through your toes, etc. Sunnah. Washing the right limb before the left, right? Performing each of the every single stage of it 3 times, including the ears and head. So these are of the afrad of the Shafi'i school, is that we wipe the head 3 times and we do the ears 3 times, right? Where the other schools they do it once. They say wiping is done once, right? If you're gonna, if you wipe it more than once, you can now start to wash it, and to perform the actions consecutively, right? So again, this is khuruj min al-khilaf. There is a genuine debate: is that valid or not? Right? So when you're told to make wudu, that's one thing. When you break it up over separate events, such that you are, you know, today, right now you wash your face. 2 hours later you wash your arm. 2 hours later you wiped your head. 2 hours later you wash your feet. Is that called wudu? Right? So the Shafi say, yeah. I mean, why not? Right? And I believe it was Sayyidina Ali or Ibn Umar, one of the two. They did this, right? That they made wudu in one place and then they completed it in another place, right? But again, that's an assumption, and we should be careful. And there was another hadith where a Sahabi didn't wash a part of his foot. So there was a part of his foot was dry. So the Prophet said, go and repeat your wudu, right? So the proof there being that because there was a gap in time, he had to restart the wudu, right? So Imam Shafi's old position, his qadim, is that you have to do things consecutively. You can't have a long break in between. His jadid is that you can. But the fact that he used to have a previous position, the fact that other madhahib say, I think we should be careful. So a number of these things are not only sunnah, but they are also makruh not to do. If that makes sense, right? So a key principle to have in your mind, avoiding the makruh is way more important than doing the sunnah, right? So what does that mean? It means whenever something is makruh, it's sunnah to not do, right? But there are countless sunnahs, like infinite sunnahs you can think of. I don't know, there's probably like 80 sunnahs of wudu, right? You can just kind of add almost indefinitely, right? Um, Optimal, more and more optimal ways of doing something, right? The du'as of the day, right? You could just how many thousand different du'as you could say throughout the morning, in the afternoon, and keep going and going and going, right? There's a million things, but then there's certain things like actually this is now makruh, right? If I don't do this, this is makruh, right? So this is a big deal, right? Let's say, for example, reciting kaf um on Friday, sunnah. Okay, is it makruh not to recite it? No. Okay, is it makruh, according to some scholars, not to do a khatam every month, or at least every 40 days? Yes. Oh, okay. So that's called makruh. It's different, right? Praying witr. It's like, okay, praying witr is sunnah, yeah, but not doing it is also makruh. So that means that's pretty important, right? So there's many things that are sunnah to do, but not makruh to miss. So making sure that you do those sunnahs that are makruh to miss, that's important, right? So the basmalah, there's debate with us in the Hanbalis. Make sure you do it. The mouth and nose, there's debate. Doing the whole head, there's debate. The ears, there's debate. Inside the beard, there's debate on this thing. Going between your fingers, etc. Consecutivity, right? There's a debate on these issues that you're trying to get out of a scenario where on Judgment Day you didn't actually end up making wudu, like you're trying to cover your back. This is much more important than the fine sunnahs that exist, right? So making sure that you avoid things that are makruh. Because what does makruh mean? It means disliked, i.e. by Allah, right? So it is something that is essentially bad, even if it's not sinful. Okay. Did I skip something? That's 10. Okay. Then it goes on to cleaning oneself. So it says cleaning oneself from urine and feces is obligatory, right? So the default is this is like any other type of najasa. So, you have urine, cat urine on your toe, you have blood, you have alcohol that you stepped in, whatever. Any of these things are najasa, and you have to wash it before you pray, right? So what does it mean? What does it mean you have to wash it? Meaning you have to wash it before you pray. Okay, well, I'm not going to pray. So then we say, well, you have to wash it before it spreads. So you stepped in some in some feces, and now you're going to walk it around in your house. Is that halal? No, it's haram. Okay, why? Because you're spreading najasa for no reason. You can't do that. So when we say it's obligatory to remove urine and feces, it means you can't pray with these things on you, or it means you're not allowed to spread it for no reason, right? As opposed to spreading it for a reason, right? Why are you throwing manure at a wall, right? Who knows why would somebody would do that? Who's seen those black and white houses in England with the thatch roofs? Have you seen those pictures?
Is it related to like a farm thing?
Farm was also a way they used to build, right? So it's called a wattle and daub house. So you got a bunch of cow dung, you mix it up with mud and straw, okay, and you throw it at the wall for insulation, and then you paint it white, right? So you have a bunch of these houses that are like what I don't know, 200, 300, 400, 500 years old in England. That are like that. It's called a those wattle and daub house, and so I'm picking up najasa and I'm throwing it at the wall. Like, why am I doing that? For a reason. Okay, why did you get your hand? Why did you get filth on your hand? That's haram. I did it for a reason. Okay, so that's fine. You can do things for a reason, right? You can spread filth for a reason. You can't spread filth for no reason, right? You can't do that. So you're spreading filth on your clothes, on your body for no reason, haram. You're about to pray with najasa, haram. So now you have to remove the filth. It is best to do so using stones and then water. This is the words used in the hadith, stones. But what stone means is anything that is dry, right? That is pure, that is not worthy of respect. It's not like food or animal bones. Animal bones are the food of the jinn. It's not like a holy paper in the past, for example. They said you can't use paper because that's what you write on, right? Um, toilet paper today is a slightly different thing, but it was something that's worthy of respect. It's kind of a sacred thing. So you can't do that like an animal. You pick up an animal and wipe yourself with it and put the animal down again. That's disrespectful. So it's not only haram but also invalid. So if you were to wipe yourself, you're going to use something like leaves, like a stone, like toilet paper, that is dry, that is pure, that is not worthy of respect, that its nature is that it removes filth. So like let's say a plastic bag doesn't have it's not rough enough to remove stuff. Um, Something else is escaping me, but that's basically what it is. That's what we mean by stones, right? Um, and so it is permissible to limit oneself to only doing this. Now, at the end of the day, if you do this, if you wipe away filth and you do not wash away the filth, are you praying with filth on you?
Yes.
So why would it be overlooked?
if it was really difficult, like if you were in a difficult situation to remove it.
Okay, so we say even if it's not a difficult situation, so you have water, you just don't want to use it. Why do you think, what is the kind of a general principle that is happening that is going to say that this kind of filth is overlooked? Is it normal to have filth there?
No.
So it's not normal. Okay, is it normal for filth to come out from there?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So having filth on your private parts is a normal everyday thing. And so asking normal everyday people to wash themselves with water every day is a difficulty. Therefore, the Sharia comes along and says it's excused. Now, did we work that out? No, we didn't actually work that out in reality. That's a hadith, right? The hadith says that. But what happens is, right, the faqih sees example from the Quran and Sunnah, and then, oh, this is what you're saying. We now have a maxim, al-mashaqqatu tajlibu taysir, difficulty will call for ease, and they have examples of it, right? They have examples of it. And then someone like myself, I will not be working directly with the maxim, nor will I be working directly with the examples in the Quran and Sunnah. I'll be working with the maxim plus the many thousands of examples in the books of fiqh. So you say, is this excuse? I'm like, I don't know until I find something very similar to what you're asking me about, right? But in principle, that's what the faqih is doing, right? Here's the examples in the Quran and Sunnah. This is the maxim, and this is the kind of difficulty that we're looking for. And we spoke about this before, anyway, right? We've spoken about kinds of difficulty. This kind of widespread, normal, right? But another thing about it is that it should be limited to a minimum, right? It should be. So we said, for example, what was it? Like for a woman's beard, a woman, it's not normal for a woman to have a beard, so therefore she's not excused, even if it is difficult, right? And so we're going to apply the same thing here. When we say the Prophet ﷺ allowed us to wipe, okay, we're going to qualify that with what is normal, okay? So first of all, the Prophet ﷺ said you can wipe, and it has to be at least 3 stones. All right, the Prophet ﷺ said, one man istajmir falyutir, right? And another version it says 3. So the Shafis, they say it means 3 or more, right? 3 or more. Imam Abu Hanifa, he says yutir means to do it a lot, doesn't mean 3 specifically. So basically, as long as it's thoroughly clean, even if you just wiped once, like as long as you know that that's all that's going to come off, that's fine for the Hanafis. But for the Shafis, no, you have to wipe 3 times, even if nothing else more is going to come off. Like it has to be a minimum of 3 wipes. Okay, so but again, this is an example of that same process. Is that haja al-ama tanzilat manzilat al-darura, right? This is like a widespread common difficulty is treated as if it was duress in that you are praying with najasa on you. But that's on the condition that it is ama, that it is normal, widespread, and difficult, as opposed to oh, this person urinated on their leg, or does that happen every day? This person, a baby vomited all over them. Does that happen every day? I don't know, something crazy happened, right? So something that is nadir, something that's rare, is not included here, right? So we're going to say that it has to be 3 stones, and it has to be in the normal place and normal time frame. So what does that mean? It means uh, uh, the filth has to be cleaned from the area that would normally be reached by that filth. So we say for a man, we say the head of the male private parts. So if urine goes beyond the head of the male private parts, then that's not normal. And so they say, for example, somebody who is not circumcised, they say it's not excused. So it goes to his foreskin, and it's like that's not excused. So, well, why? Well, because you're supposed to get circumcised, aren't you? So, well, I'm not. Say, well, it's not normal, is it? Right? And so if it goes beyond the head of the male private parts, that has to be washed now. It is no longer now a part of that normal exception. Similarly with feces, if it goes beyond the area that it normally come out of, it goes beyond that, then it's not excused, right? And part of this, as far as I know, is splashbacks from a conventional Western bathroom. So using a conventional bathroom, it's normal that water might splash back on you, and we say, yeah, it's normal because you're using the wrong thing, right? So is there an argument to say, hey, this is how all bathrooms are, and you can't expect me to go and relieve myself in the middle of the street, can you? Or in the middle of my backyard or something like that, because that's that's not acceptable, that's not this, not that. I mean, if somebody said that's fine. But if you ask me, I say it's above my pay grade. As far as I know, it's not excused because it's not world over normal, right? So splashbacks from using the fact that you're defecating or urinating into water, that is not the default way that people are supposed to do. So therefore, it's not excused as far as I know, right? And again, I would be happy to be proved wrong. Um, so it says if one wishes to limit oneself to using just water, or okay, that's something else now. But so the default is if you're just going to use toilet paper or just going to see this one is going to be said what is normal. Similarly, what if you waited 3 hours and the feces became dry and then when you wiped it didn't come off? Is that excused? The answer is no. So why? Because it's not normal, right? It's not normal, right?
Shay, can I ask a quick question?
It's not like that.
Is this also related to that concept we spoke last week about, like, for example, how it is not normal for women to have facial hair or
Exactly.
women to
All
have
the
a
same.
beard,
Yeah,
but they're okay, okay, got it. Thank you.
exactly the same scenario, right? But then the issue is sometimes the norm can change. So again, somebody comes along and says, "Yeah, that's true." But here we are in the West, and not just the West, actually, most bathrooms now are Western, and that's how they are. And so, therefore, this is a difficulty that is now normal and therefore should be excused, right? There's a logic there. But again, it's above my pay grade. Someone like myself can't come along. I can't do things like that, even if I can see the logic in it, right? I don't have that. I'm not on that level to kind of do that kind of thing. Okay. So it says if one wishes to limit oneself to just doing water, so just water or stones, then water is best. So i.e., ideally, you wipe yourself as much as possible and then wash your private parts. That's the best. If you don't want to do that, you just want to wash, that's fine. That's better. And there's no conditions there. And then the third option is just wipe with the conditions there, i.e., that you wiped 3 times. The najasa didn't go beyond the normal thing. So what happens if not najasa goes beyond the normal that has to be washed? Well, that's a bit difficult, yeah, but it's not common, so therefore it's not an issue. It's not what's it called? It's not common, so therefore it's not overlooked. Whereas if it was common, it would be overlooked. Inshallah, we'll stop there. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم سبحان الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك